Hey, Shalom family. So, two things. I want to talk about how being a Hebrew, being a Israelite, is a nationality and not a religion. But also, and having said that, it has in modern times become a religion, right? And you want to make sure that you're not coming out of one religious order to enter into another religious order, right? So what religion does, this is the way that I conceptualize religion in the world. If you take a sheet of paper and say that on this one sheet of paper is all of the truth of the Most High, what religion does is it tears off a piece of that paper, and what it does is it focuses in on that part. So it takes a portion of the Most High's truth and focuses in on that part and builds its own traditions and ideas and philosophies around that portion of it, and to the exclusion of what's the rest of the sheet of paper, right? The rest of the truth. So that's the way that I conceptualize religion as a whole. And then within all of those religions, you have look at Christianity. I don't know how other religions operate in terms of if they have different. I'm sure they have some type of division, but I know that Christianity has many denominations, right? And how these denominations came about was the fact that, well, originally, coming out of, you had your messianic, your Hebrews who were messianic, who were believers in the Messiah, followers of the Messiah, who were the original, template of who we were to be, right? Who we were called to be. And these were Hebrews that were returning back to the covenant through the Messiah, Yahusha. That we refer to as followers of the way, Nazarene. They were simply returning back to the ways of Yah through the Messiah, but through the renewed covenant, which was a better covenant than what was made with our forefathers, because the Most High wrote His laws in our heart, and through the Messiah becoming a life-giving Spirit, was able to pour out the Spirit of the Most High upon us, within us, so that we can walk in spirit and in truth, right? So those were the early believers, and then as those believers were, the Hebrew people became scattered. The Church of Rome, and the Gentiles also started coming into these people, right? Gentiles came to Messiah and were grafted into the tree of the people of Israel. But then as Rome grabbed hold of the core truth about the Christ, about the Messiah, they took hold of the faith and disconnected it from its original Hebraic roots and began to synchronize it with their pagan beliefs and practices, right? So early Christianity, once it got past the original Hebrew Messianics, followers of the way, became a religion under Rome. So the core truth of Christ became, they took that portion of it, disconnected it from the rest of it. So they tore that piece off of the sheet of paper, took that portion, and they formed a religion based on their own traditions and things like that. But through that core truth of it, being the Messiah, being Christ, the Most High was able to still take that and move through it, to systemically move His people back to the truth. So as different movements came, the Eastern Orthodox Church tore off, right, and the Protestant movement broke off and began to, somebody would wake up and get a certain truth, right? So they would say, okay, this is something, this Roman church, the way things are going is not accurate, and they would wake up to these things, and so they would pull away. So what happens with denominations typically is that, you got this core group of people that's doing things a certain way, and then somebody wakes up and they're like, wait a minute, the Most High puts it in their spirit to realize this is not correct, what we're doing. So typically what will happen is that person will go to, the leadership. The leadership will reject it, and the person will break off, and then some people will follow, and then they will start to form their own, thing based off of that the revelation or the understanding that they have received, right? So that's how you have all of the different denominations and things like that within Christianity. So you had the Protestant movement, then you have all the different denominations, Baptist and Pentecostal, Holiness, and all the different groups, right? So but it's typically that pattern that happens, right? So you take a portion of the truth and you emphasize. So like you look at the Baptists, they're going to emphasize baptism in different aspects, right? They receive the revelation and they kind of focus in on that and emphasize on that one. And you look at your Pentecostals, the different ones who focus on, they put emphasis on tongues, or the moves of the Spirit, or different things, right, for each denomination. But what you'll see is there's a emphasis on certain aspects of the truth. So if you look at that, they tear off the sheet of paper, and then they highlight certain points. These are the highlighted points that we're going to focus on. So that is how that happened. So that process continued to happen, and there's a functional and a dysfunctional portion of that, right? The dysfunctional portion is that, when the Most High begins to open somebody's eyes in the group to say, hey, listen, it's something that you're missing, it's something that you're doing wrong. Typically, the leadership is not going to receive it. Typically, the group is going to, whatever truth they get to, they're going to just kind of put their heels down, stick their heels in on it, and they're going to stay there. That's the dysfunctional portion. The functional portion is that somebody received the truth and they decided to move on it. They decided to continue to follow the Most High, continue to seek after truth, because the Most High is trying to. It's not that He's giving new revelation to people. It's that He is trying to open people's eyes to get them closer back to the original faith, right? So, and that's happening in portions throughout history. It's happening in portions, person by person. But again, going back to the dysfunctional part, once this person gets the revelation, they move off, they take their little portion of the sheet of paper, they highlight their points, and they stick their heels in the ground. So then when somebody in their group starts to get more understanding, they won't budge. So now they got to go start a whole nother denomination, right? So that has happened throughout Christianity. That's how that's happened. So getting back to Hebrews, so there has always been people, it's been the Hebrews have been a dispersed group of people, but there have always been people throughout who have known their, maintained their identity throughout the diaspora. But as a whole, and especially particularly us here in America, we have not known who we are, right? So in this, there have been movements prior to this portion of time right now that we're in. There have been movements of people coming into that understanding and spreading it, and in doing that, again, something happens under a person takes their certain things that they emphasize, and a religion is formed around it, right? So if you go back to earlier people who have movements of this truth about our identity, you'll see that a lot of the groups, the camps and stuff that are out there now, they stemmed from former a larger group, right? So they stem from things from the past. So these groups are just like the same thing. They formed like a denomination. They took the truth about the identity of the Hebrew people and took certain elements to focus on, and that became another type of denomination, right? Another type of religion where certain things are emphasized. Because when Rome separated the Hebrew people, the faith from the people and the culture, there are certain cultural things that were intentionally put off, like the calendar, knowing that, keeping the Sabbath and the appointed times, the feast days, and the dietary laws, and the physical appearance as far as attire and different things. There's certain aspects that are very culturally specific to a group of people, and the Romans intentionally disconnected the people from that, and that's happened over time in history. Whenever you separate a people from you separate a people from their culture when you try to take a people captive, right? So that's why there's such a return back to those cultural elements, to learn the language and learn the return to the feast days and our calendar and different things, to reclaim those aspects of culture, right? But if you're not careful, and what has happened is that a whole religion in and of itself, it's like taking off that sheet of paper and highlighting certain points and focusing in and overemphasizing those points to the exclusion of the whole, right? Which will look a lot different from, like I said, going back to those original Hebrews who were walking with Messiah, what their emphasis was as far as the Basor and the good news and the returning back to receiving the spirit of Yah, to return back to spirit and truth, the full picture of the Most High, right? It wasn't an emphasis on just those certain aspects. So when you look around today, you'll see that it has become a religion. And going back to my point I made earlier about the fact that it is not a Hebrew or Israelite is referring to an identity as far as the nationality of a people. When you look at a nationality of people, you have to understand that those people will have a variety of beliefs. So if you take Asia, look at Asians, right? If I'm looking at thousands and thousands of Asians, I don't know what they believe. I can't assume what their belief system is. There are some Asians who may practice Buddhism, some who may practice Christianity, some who may practice Taoism, some who may practice all kinds of different, things, Hinduism. They may practice all kinds of different things. Just because someone is Asian, that doesn't tell me what it is that they believe specifically, right? They may have some cultural aspects in common from their region being in the East, but overall, you don't know what their belief system is. And it's the same thing today when someone identifies as being a descendant of the 12 tribes of Israel, and they may use the term Hebrew or Israelite or Hebrew Israelite. You don't know what they believe. They're just telling you their nationality. You don't know what they believe, what belief system they've attached themselves to, what things that they are highlighting on the sheet of paper, what piece of the sheet of paper they pulled off, right? But the commonality is certain, just certain things that more than likely we may have in common, but the details are going to differ greatly from person to person, group to group. So those are two things to know. One, for those who may not identify themselves with this group of people, to know that you can't put everybody in the same box. Everybody does not believe the same thing. Everybody does not practice the same thing. It's a diverse group of people who just all have in common the fact of their knowledge of the physical nationality, right? That's the one thing that you could say that everyone has in common. But beyond that, there's going to be some level of returning back to the Most High's commands, but that may differ based on a group of people. So those who identify with this group now have to, just like the same way that you're calling people to come out of the religious aspect of Christianity and return back to the Messiah and return back to the truth and the commands of the Most High Yah, you have to also come out of this religious aspect of being a Hebrew, being an Israelite, the Hebrew Israelite religion that's formed around it, and come out of this overemphasis on things that differ from what the Most High has called us to in the Messiah, right? So we have to put our eyes on the Messiah and receive the set apart spirit, so that we can walk with Yah in spirit and in truth, and wholeness and oneness, and we're no longer dividing that sheet of paper, but we're walking into the wholeness and able to see. He said, I'm going to send you the spirit that's going to lead you into all truth, so that you can discern and understand and know what it is that Yah has called us to, so that our minds can be renewed from all this cultural divergence that we have found ourselves in, all of this religion, all of these cultural differences, all of these philosophies and traditions of man, so that we can come out of all of these man-made things and man-made emphasis to return to the core truth of what Yah wants us to be focused on. So we do that through Messiah, right? That's why he's our head, because he did it perfectly, and he has been given authority and he's given authority for us to receive of the spirit that's going to lead us into all truth. So we have to come out of all man-made religion, preferences, emphasis, and no matter what it may be, and return to the core central thing. So whether you identify as a Christian or as a Hebrew or as Israelite, we have to come out of all, cling to what your identity is. That's your nationality. Can't nobody take that from you. But come into the spirit and truth. Hallelujah. Come into spirit and truth. Return to the Messiah. If he be lifted up, he will draw all to himself. He will draw us, that's including us, and will keep our eyes on the main thing, and cause us to no longer add to or take away from what the Most High desires us to walk in, to understand, and to know. All right. Shalom, shalom.